Hi everybody, it's Tom Woods. I'm here with Professor Jared Casey of University College Dublin. He is the author of Libertarian Anarchy Against the State. Wow, that is one seriously shocking title. And today we're going to talk a little bit about, well, Ireland. He's come here from Ireland, visiting the United States for a few days, and so I grabbed hold of him, got him on camera for you guys. And so we're going to talk about what type of example Ireland is for us when we talk about issues like this, when we're talking about not just that the shoe industry should be privatized, and not just that maybe we should have vouchers for this. No, we're talking about real free market here and applying it even in areas where we're told these are public goods that need to be provided by your wise overlords who take your money from you. We're rejecting that whole way of thinking. But where are the examples? Like, when has this actually been done? And you've been saying that Ireland is an example. So explain yourself.
Ireland is an example because one of the strongest objections, perhaps the most basic objection to anarchism, is that anarchism, we need law in order to have society, and the only way to have law is to have a state make it. And so to which I say, well, it's been done. So people say, how can we do this in the future? And I say, it's been done in the past. So the law system in Ireland from about 500 BC to about 1600 AD, that's just over 2,000 years, was not state-run. In fact, the entire society was organized on a private law basis. This is known in English as the Brehon Law, and what you had in each of Ireland was divided into a series of very small little kingdoms called tuatha, right? They're very small, so I'm the king from here down to the river. Okay, it was like that small. You're talking about 3,000 people, maybe 5,000 people, and the legal system there was run by a family. A family made this their business. They specialized in learning the laws and knowing what the laws and customs of that society were. And when there was a dispute, they adjudicated and they gave a decision. And in order to maintain their business, of course, they had to be scrupulously fair, because if they weren't, and then nobody had to go to them, you couldn't be subpoenaed. Now you might say, well, that's all very well. Okay, you can go to somebody and get a decision, but what happens if you lose and you give you make rude gestures and so on? Well, the answer is they had a very effective system that before you went to law, before the case was heard, you had to actually give sureties. You had to make a sort of deposit or take out a bond in modern and so on, so that when the case went against you, the bond would simply forfeit, and that's how the system worked. For more serious cases involving what we now think of as criminal actions, again, the idea here is that criminal activities weren't offences against the state. There aren't any such things as offences against the state. The state is not offended by anything I do. It's individuals who are offended. Right. If I steal from somebody, that's that person's property I've stolen. If I kill somebody, it's that person's relatives who are offended. So the payment was by and large a payment of a surety, even in the case of homicide. The equivalent thing would have been in Anglo-Saxon England would have been the money, the man money as they called it, that you paid for it. Now the aggrieved family didn't have to accept it. They could have insisted on a more severe penalty. But again, the community as a whole has an interest in preventing bloodshed. So by and large, the payment was extraordinarily large, and depending on your status, very large. Now, the way this worked in traditional society was that your kinship group were effectively your insurance agency. When you operated in society, you were backed by your kinship group. And if you couldn't or wouldn't pay, your kinship group ended up paying for you. Now, what that meant is that when a decision went against you, if you couldn't pay, your kinship group had to pay. And if you were a recidivist and they were making a lot of payments, where did the pressure come on you to behave? It came from your own kinship group. In the end, if you really were an outrageous reoffender, they would say, we disclaim all responsibility for you. He's on his own. He's not a member of any kinship group. We won't back him in any way. Now you're without insurance, and you can't operate in the society with them without kinship insurance, and you will be declared an outlaw. And if you're an outlaw, anyone may kill you, and there will be no payment to make. Nobody will prosecute. Now, let me put this to you. If an outlaw decision goes against you, would you A, go down to the local pub and drink for 3 days, okay? Or would you B, hightail it out of there? And the answer is you would hightail it out of there. So effectively, it was a sentence of banishment from your community. And that's how it worked.
Now, if I'm understanding you correctly, the point of raising this and indeed other episodes in history in your book, is not to say we're going to, obviously, it's not to say we're going to adopt this root and branch.
No.
So what is the point of raising?
Well, the point is, first of all, to demonstrate, albeit historically, that legal systems without the state have existed in the past. Indeed, they were the norm. Not just in Irish society, but in Anglo-Saxon and in German, in all traditional societies, this is how they worked. In fact, this is how it worked in Roman law for the most part. Roman law was almost completely private law. I remember when I first started looking at Roman law, I was shocked. I was looking for all the public law stuff and I couldn't find it. And that's because there's very little of it. Okay, now it moves in that direction, of course, once you move from the Republic to the Principate. Okay, and the emperor starts doing it, and then he starts effectively making edicts and all of the rest, and it begins to look a lot more like what we have, right? But from the foundation of Rome, certainly up to the fall the end of the Republic, and even for 100 years afterwards, almost all Roman law is private law, and it operates in this way. If two Romans had a dispute, who was the judge? The praetor, who was the chief legal officer in the Roman Republic, had a list. Right? So if you and I had a dispute, we could agree on another citizen to be the judge, and if we agreed, that was fine. If we couldn't, the praetor took the first guy off the list. So the judge in our case was just another citizen, not a specialist legal representative or somebody empowered in any particular way, but just, if you like, a peer, somebody who shared our interests and so on, and who would judge between us. So the point then is to show that this has been possible in the past, and what has been done can be done. Now, I'm not saying, of course, that we want to simply transpose what we had in the past into the future. That's not going to work. And one of the reasons why it wouldn't work, as it did then, is, of course, that kinship groups don't exist in the same way. So that system of surety provision simply couldn't work because we don't have kinship groups. And indeed, it would, that I would think, to put it mildly, that it would violate libertarian axioms, to put it mildly. But there's a very simple way of dealing with this. You simply substitute insurance. Just as, for example, in certain activities, before people will engage with you, you have to be bonded. In other words, you have to post a bond so that in the event of your failure to do something, the bond is there and they can get a recompense. So I'm not exactly making this up as I go along, but it's just one way in which this could work, is that if you wanted to operate in a libertarian society, one way in which you could ensure that people would deal with you is if you were bonded. To the extent that you weren't, or inadequately bonded, then people would have to be prepared to take a risk in dealing with you. You know, they'd have to make a judgment that the advantages or rewards or profits were great enough to warrant the risk,
right,
and take a chance. So something like that could, if you like, I think in a libertarian way, provide the same function as a kinship group.
Can you say something really brief about what the law merchant was, and is that a helpful example?
Yeah. Well, the law merchant is a brilliant idea because in medieval Europe, you had multiple, hundreds of competing little polities all over Europe and so on. So suppose you lived in Portugal, let's say that you lived in Lisbon, and somebody wanted to get you to deliver a shipload of wine, say, to Rotterdam. Okay, you say, well, hey, I mean, if I send this off and then he doesn't pay or he disappears, that's a shipload of wine gone down the tubes and I don't get any money. So merchants devised a little system of credit checks, as it were. So you would go down to your local credit agency, as it were, merchant agency, and say, I've got a letter from Mynheer van Breda in Rotterdam. He wants me to send a shipload of wine. Can I do it? And they say, yeah, we've got records. He dealt with so-and-so and so-and-so, and you do that. Now, the advantage of that, of course, is that it's international. It doesn't require a cumbersome legal mechanism to deal with. You can cheat, but you can cheat once, right? Okay, so if you want to cheat, you've got to cheat big. But hey, again, you've got to be really stupid to engage in a big business operation with somebody who has no record of business. Right. So typically, you've got to, it's like, like eBay today or the internet, you've got to build up your credit rating, and then people will deal with you. If you don't, it wouldn't work. But you had even, there was a simpler system. In the fairs that took place, for example, in England and France. In England, where fairs came together for a day and you had merchants dealing with each other and with the public, they had what they called pie powder courts. And that's from the French, pied poudre, which means dusty feet. Because you travel there and you got dust on your feet. And they had very strict rules. In order to participate in the fair, you had to agree to abide by the decisions of the court. The case had to be heard and the decision given and the remedies paid before you left. That was speedy justice, okay? But that ensured that when people came, they came with the guarantee, if you like, that justice, even if it was relatively summary and speedy, was going to be done. The law merchant, if you like, operated over a longer period of time and so on. But that's the way, by and large, the commercial law developed. And I mentioned the commercial law, which developed from the 12th and 13th century through trading groups like the Hanseatic League and others, was adopted effectively wholesale by many of the systems, including the common law system in the 19th century.
I think that about does it. That's I would say you have given a satisfactory answer. And if you want more information, you've got to read Libertarian Anarchy by Jared Casey. And you can visit us. I have a special page about these sorts of topics featuring Professor Casey's book, libertyclassroom.com/Casey. And of course, Professor Casey teaches all the cool libertarians, thousands of them, teaches them at libertyclassroom.com, where they're listening to him on their computers, on their iPods, and whatever. And you can be part of that by joining us there. Not in their cars. His course is too hard to do in your car. The other ones, like the one I do, you can drive around, you can be in a coma, it's fine. But his, you got to sit down and study. But thanks for being with us, Professor Casey.
Not at all.
Thank you guys. Much. We'll see you over there, libertyclassroom.com/Casey. Get your brain moving. It's going to explode with all this information. See you around.